Elaine Burnes is the award-winning author of the novel Wishbone and short story collection A Perfect Life and Other Stories. Wishbone won a 2016 GCLS Award for Dramatic/General Fiction. A Perfect Life earned a 2016 Rainbow Award. Endurance, first in a trilogy, came out in June. She lives in Western Massachusetts. Take it away, Elaine.
Thank you. Thank you, Strong Women, Strange Worlds, for this opportunity. And you can follow my blog at my website, which is on the screen, to keep up with my latest. And as she said, there will be 2 more books in this series. The scene I'll read takes place shortly after the tour ship Endurance experiences an emergency while in orbit at Saturn. The shaking and spinning have stopped. Now the main character, Captain Lynn Randall, is going through the ship, checking on things. Other characters are Mark, the first officer, Edward, the chief engineer, his assistant, Isabel. Sharon is in charge of the guests, and Petra is the ship's computer. On the bottom deck, the acrid smell of burned synthetics assaulted her before she got to the engineering suite. Through dense smoke, a row of dim emergency lights outlined the room, and spots hit key control panels. Mark and Edward were reattaching a panel in the wall, and Isabel Roig, assistant engineer, was sliding shut a hatch in the ceiling to the bay between decks where the retractable wings were stored. Edward flipped a switch, and the suite's lights came on, revealing the toll the event had taken. A fan whirred to life, and the air began to clear. "Wings are undamaged and secure," Isabel said. Edward said the engines were offline, but life safety systems were coming back. No loss of atmosphere, so no breaches other than the observation deck, which, because of the dome, had the weakest framing. It was designed to protect the rest of the ship in case of a failure, hence the ceiling of the elevator shaft and stairway. Damages were limited to unsecured objects and physical injuries, none of which was life-threatening. "A pipe broke in laundry," Mark said. "There's a floating flood down there, but bots are vacuuming it up." Isabel reported Dr. Amos had 12 patients, the 4 most critical and medical, the rest in their rooms. He was monitoring the medbots and 24 guests. Lynn let out a relieved breath when Sharon called down that all passengers and crew were accounted for. She searched the faces of her staff. Nothing had sunk in yet other than a preliminary relief they were still alive. "Do we know what happened?" Isabel said. Lynn shook her head. "We'll have to review the logs to see what it was, but for now, I'm getting reports that bots have started repairs." "Engines aren't damaged," Edward said, "only offline as a precaution." "What do we do now?" Mark asked. "I thought we'd all meet in the dining room," Lynn said. "The sooner guests can see us operating normally, the better." "What do we tell them?" he asked. "The truth. We don't know, but we're working on finding answers. I sent an SOS 2 hours ago. We've heard nothing from anyone." Any ship within range should have responded. Worst case, the signal would have reached Mars and Earth Control, the 2 agencies that oversaw all space operations. "If we were on an ocean," Isabel said, "I'd think we were hit by a rogue wave, which would hit everyone else as well. But out here? Could it have been a swarm of microdebris?" Edward said. "An asteroid? Aliens?" Mark added. Lynn raised her hands to stop them. "Let's get the outside sensors rebooted. In the meantime," she said to Mark, "I think we should go see for ourselves." Lynn and Mark made their way up the central stairway to the bridge deck. From a storage closet, they donned life packs and flipped on their helmets and gloves. Inside what was now an airlock around the last steps to the obs deck, they tethered to the wall and waited while the pressure equalized. At the top of the steps, Mark released the obs hatch and peered up through what had once been the floor of a luxurious lounge, but was now the outer hull. They floated out into space. All the furnishings had been stripped away, the carpet shredded. Walls rose to knee height, and where durapanes and frames would take over to allow an almost unfettered view, nothing remained. Nothing between them and infinity. As relieved as Lynn was that no one had been up here, a little of her died to see her beloved ship so violated. She spun to take in their surroundings, noting dismally, no sign of Saturn. All around, stars and the Milky Way filled their view. Without bright Saturn, the stars popped with a surreal brilliance. They'd seen this on their trip out, in the long, empty stretches between planets. So where was Saturn? She focused on one bright star, maybe the sun, but larger than it would be from Saturn. To its right sat an even larger object. If that was Saturn, they were no longer in orbit or anywhere near it. She called up the ship's computer. Petra, locate Saturn. Saturn is not in the solar system, Petra replied. She tapped Mark on the shoulder to get his attention. Did you hear that? Saturn can't just vanish. Computer malfunction? She selected the bright star. Identify object. Object is Ptolemy, designation HR 5460. That doesn't make sense, she said to Mark. We shouldn't be able to distinguish it from Regal Kent. But if that's Ptolemy, is the other Uranus? Seems too bright. Mark selected the bigger object. Identify. Object is Regal Centaurus, designation HR 5459. That's not possible, Lynn said. Petra, are you experiencing a malfunction? Not that I'm aware of, Captain. Then where are we? We are in the Regal Centaurus system. Formerly known as Alpha Centauri, the binary system is closest to Earth. Petra, stop. How did we get here? Unknown at this time. What the? They each turned, taking in the stars around them. Lynn made out constellations, blurs within the Milky Way, but definitely recognizable. She knew this sky, but didn't. She floated, turning slowly, staring at the glittery blanket above and all around them. Regal Kent? Where's our sun? Mark asked Petra. Petra gave them the coordinates. Lynn turned, but couldn't find it among the billions of stars. Too small, too far away. This simply wasn't possible. She pulled on her tether till her feet set firmly against the hull, longing to lie down, to hug the ship. She closed her eyes and became keenly aware of the hiss of her breath inside the helmet and her pulse pounding in her ears. This wasn't an unfamiliar feeling, that realization after she'd stepped off the trail in the woods, gotten turned around, and then couldn't find her way back. It's a stone in your gut that grows, pressing on the diaphragm, making it hard to breathe. Your scalp tingles, and you know you are lost. She switched off her mic, then arced back, opening her eyes to take in the stars, familiar and not, and howled, loud and long, like the last wolf crying to be heard, to be found. To be continued.